Ben Kentish on LBC.
It's Friday afternoon, it's 10 to 6, you know what time it is. Here's Simon Marks with his American Week.
Ben, it is not overstating things to suggest that the future of European security hinges on what takes place over the next few hours in, of all places, Alaska. Only a week ago at this very moment, we didn't know the summit meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin was a go, much less that the American leader would welcome his Russian interlocutor to a US military base in Alaska, where a mad scramble has been underway to get everything ready. On the face of it, just allowing Vladimir Putin to set foot on American soil for the first time in a decade looks to most people like a big win for the Kremlin leader, given that he is sanctioned to the hilt by the United States and wanted for war crimes by the International Criminal Court. But Donald Trump, of course, isn't most people.
I heard CNN fake news talking about that was a big win for him. Normally, he would say the opposite, but they said, oh, it's a big win that he came here. Normally, we would say the opposite.
Except you wouldn't unless you were working for the increasing number of Trump propaganda outlets that are finding a warm welcome in his White House briefing room. In the hours leading up to the Alaska summit, every former president of the United States would have locked themselves away, pored over the briefing books, surrounded themselves with key figures from their National Security Council and determined the best strategy to adopt in order to put Putin in his box and save Ukraine from being dismembered. But not this president. Instead, he's replaced the non-stop planning with non-stop yakking.
I think that President Putin would like to see a deal. I think if I weren't president, he would take over all of Ukraine. It's a war that should have never happened. If I weren't president, in my opinion, he would much rather take over all of Ukraine. But I am president, and he's not going to mess around with me.
Of course, critics of the summit fear that Vladimir Putin is absolutely going to mess around with President Trump, partly because he's messed around with every successive American president since Bill Clinton and thinks he got the better of all of them, and also because he plans to woo the US leader with promises of economic partnership in the Arctic and elsewhere. A revived bilateral relationship is the name of the Kremlin's game, not between Russia and Ukraine, but between Russia and the United States. And if Moscow was listening to the Brian Kilmeade program on Fox News Radio yesterday, Putin already knows he's tantalizing Trump with economic catnip.
You know, Russia's got a tremendous potential. They have the largest piece of land by far.
Right.
It's massive. It's got great wealth on it.
But all they do is oil. All they do is oil and gas. They can't even they can't even farm.
But that's okay. Oil and gas is a very profitable business. You know, if you're going to have one business that's good, that's the business to have, and they have it.
And he can't wait to get a piece of it. As on so many subjects, the president has been all over the map this week about the summit. He thinks it could be a breakthrough. Oh, no, actually, he thinks it's just a listening exercise. He thinks maybe Putin is serious about peace, but then again, he doesn't think he can even come out of today's meeting with the promise of a ceasefire. The one constant in his telling of the story, his desire, very rapidly to broker a second meeting that includes Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and maybe, he suddenly said yesterday, even the Europeans.
We have a meeting with President Putin tomorrow. I think it's going to be a good meeting, but the more important meeting will be the second meeting that we're having. We're going to have a meeting with President Putin, President Zelensky, myself, and maybe we'll bring some of the European leaders along, maybe not. I don't know that it's going to be very important. We're going to see what happens.
Let's just break that down. Zelensky and European leaders, including our own Prime Minister, claim they have persuaded President Trump to stick to a 5-point strategy that ensures he doesn't sell Kyiv down the river later today. But at no point has the president publicly acknowledged the agreement that the Europeans say he struck. And now he's not even sure it would be very important to have the Europeans in the room for any subsequent conversations between the warring parties.
There are a lot of concerns that Putin may manipulate Trump in these closed-door talks, getting him on board with Russia's vision of a peace deal, which would include land concessions and no security guarantees.
That's my LBC colleague Tony Waterman. She is in Alaska at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, the remote outpost where the summit is taking place. It's the headquarters of America's Arctic Warriors and calls itself the nation's premier free-air power projection platform. Certainly, Tony reports that a lot of power projection will be occurring there when the summit gets underway at around 8 o'clock UK time tonight.
Ultimately, it is going to come down to which Trump shows up. Is it the Trump that in the past has tried to placate the Russian president, or is it the Trump who in recent months has grown increasingly frustrated with Putin and really wants this war to come to an end?
The future of the conflict, of Ukraine's borders, of NATO and of the transatlantic alliance that has kept the peace in Europe for the past 80 years now hinges on the answer to that question. It is worth making the point that while we are all talking about the summit, we are not talking about the president's relationship with the late Jeffrey Epstein. On multiple other fronts this week, the president also acted to divert everyone's attention. His most dramatic move, inventing a pretext for the National Guard to be mobilized here in Washington.
I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back.
The president, whose own supporters ransacked the congressional building on January the 6th, 2021, and were then pardoned by him for their deadly violent actions, painted a picture of Washington that few residents here recognise. A city of, as he put it, complete and total lawlessness, despite official statistics showing violent crime here is at a 30-year low. But statistics these days don't cut it with the president. We saw that earlier this month when he didn't like the jobs numbers published by the Bureau of Labour Statistics and so fired its chief. And on crime, just listen to the question he was asked by one of those entirely sycophantic propagandists who are now welcomed daily into his interactions with the press.
There were some very concerning reports about crime statistics. Police are manipulating crime data to downplay crime in D.C. Will the administration release its own crime statistics to counter their misinformation?
Unlike Lord Haw-Haw, she didn't even have to move to a different country to ply her trade. The president's answer to a question that perhaps he was very much expecting.
They are giving us phony crime stats, just like they gave other stats in the financial world, but they're phony crime stats. And Washington, D.C. is at its worst point, and it will soon be at its best point. You're going to have a very safe, you're going to have a crime-free city.
None of that is true, but he has revoked part of the law that allows Washington to govern its own affairs in order to create a sense of emergency in a city where none exists. His plan, of course, is to couch himself as the U.S. capital's saviour.
¿Qué motivo te dieron?
As National Guard and masked federal agents police the largely tranquil city centre, they are hauling people off the streets. A reporter with the local CBS affiliate found them dragging a delivery driver away from his moped, refusing to provide any information about why. Onlookers remonstrated with the officers but were given no answers. And let's be clear, Trump's plan is for Washington to serve as the test bed for how much of this he can get away with. That's not opinion. He actually said it when he indicated that the National Guard will be on the streets here beyond an initial 30 days.
It's going to pertain initially to D.C. It's almost, we're going to use it as a very positive example, and we're going to be asking for extensions on that, long-term extensions. I don't want to call national emergency. If I have to, I will. But I think the Republicans in Congress will approve this pretty much unanimously.
He said New York, Baltimore, Chicago, Los Angeles and Oakland are next on his list, all of them Democratic Party strongholds where he intends to deploy the National Guard in the months between now and next year's midterm elections. In other news this week, the president announced that every single exhibit in the Smithsonian Institution's world-famous museums is to be re-evaluated. Only those artifacts that align with the president's personal interpretation of history will remain on display. Total Banana Republic stuff. And there was more of that this week at the storied Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts.
The Kennedy Center honors have been among the most prestigious awards in the performing arts. I wanted one. I was never able to get one. This year, it's true, actually. I would have taken it if they would have called me. I waited and waited and waited, and I said,
The hell with it. I'll become chairman. And I'll give myself an honor. Maybe I'm going to honor, next year we'll honor Trump, okay?
You think he's kidding. He's put himself in charge of what he calls the Trump Kennedy Center and has personally picked this year's award winners after rejecting what he called wokesters on the shortlist. He will also present the televised awards ceremony in September, which will honour Michael Crawford, the rock band Kiss, Sylvester Stallone, the country music star George Strait, and, mercifully, Gloria Gaynor. At the age of 81, she has survived long enough to get a gong from Donald Trump. Her decision to accept it may be debatable, but whatever you think, we can all then seek to emulate the enduring patience she urges in her best-known hit.
Simon Marks there, and the icon that is Gloria Gaynor.